We are on page 9 and 10. I'm just going to go over these really quickly. I'm really hoping that you followed our modeling yesterday of how we showed work. So remember, our first step is always to add or subtract. So I should be subtracting 5 from both sides. Negative 5a, remember that becomes 0. That's why we subtracted 5, equals 0. 0 divided by anything is equal to 0. Okay, now I have to undo that 5, just like I undid it from the other side. Just because it's on the other side of our variable doesn't mean we do anything different. So 5 minus 5, that goes away. It's 0. 3b equals 20 minus 5, which is 15. So I'm dividing both sides by 3. I realize I'm going very fast. Hopefully you've got this done and are just checking your work. So I'm subtracting 3 from both sides. I have 4a equals 28. Dividing both sides by 4, because remember 4 divided by 4 is 1. 1a is the same thing as a. 28 divided by 4 is 7. Now I'm going to subtract 3 from both sides. Be careful here. Remember your integer rules. When our signs are the same, we find the sum. And this, in this case, it's getting more negative. Dividing both sides by negative 4. Again, remember your integer rules for division. Negative divided by negative is positive, or anything divided by itself is 1. Okay? Subtracting 1 from both sides. I have 2n equals 12. If I divide both sides by 2, n equals 6. I added 5 to both sides. So I have negative 3n. Don't forget to bring down those negative signs. Is 27. So I have to divide both sides by negative 3. So n should be equal to negative 9. Right? Subtract 2 from both sides. This one's a lot like number 1. Negative 2x equals 0. Anytime we have 0 divided by anything, it equals 0. Same thing here. Subtract 4, subtract 4. What is v going to be equal to? 0. Questions on page 9. Anything you're like, how did you get that? You've got all those correct. Awesome. All right, page 10. Make sure you're double checking your work. To get rid of the negative 9, to make it 0, we would add 3 to it, which means 4v equals negative 40. Dividing both sides by 4, v equals negative 10. In the good bit. Subtract 5 from both sides. So negative 4x equals, is that 36? So you guys got there? If I divide both sides by negative 4, x equals negative 9. Is that what you got? Hopefully. Add 2 to both sides to make that 0. 4x equals negative 4. Divide by 4. So when I have different signs and I'm dividing, my answer is going to be negative. 4 divided by 4 is 1. Subtract 1 from both sides. Negative 3x equals 15. Make sure when you divide by a negative 3, not just by a 3. Because we don't want what negative x equals, we want what x equals. So this is negative 5. Subtract 1. So we have 5v equals negative 15. Dividing by 5. So 1v equals negative 3. Add 1 to make it equal 0. 3x equals 12. Divide both sides by 3 to get 1x. X equals 4 here. I should probably move my camera instead of pushing everything off my desk. Adding 4, we have 3n equals 6. Make sure you do whatever you do to one side of your equal sign, you're doing to the other. Divide by 3 on both sides of my equal sign, n equals 2. Subtract 5 from both sides. So 4n equals negative 20. Divide by 4. N equals -5. Any questions on number 10? Anything you're like, wait, how did she get that? Go back. It's okay. Oh, we're okay. All right. Page 11. This is going to be the same thing, except a little bit different. Two-step equations still. So remember, we're still going to add or subtract, and then we're going to multiply or divide. So let's see how this is different. How do I get rid of my -1? Add 1. I'm adding 1 because -1 plus 1 is 0. This becomes 0. Well, I don't like this example, but how do I get rid of, well, what does that fraction bar mean? What's being done to v? I'm dividing by 5. How do I get rid of division by 5? I would multiply by 5. Very good. So that's how these are a little bit different. So if I multiply, remember I'm showing this with parentheses. If I multiply both sides by 5, 5 divided by 5 is 1. So I have v equals, well, 0 times anything is 0. So it didn't even matter what I did to it. Okay, so these are a little bit different. Instead of dividing as our second step, we're going to be doing what as our second step? Multiplying. Make sure you're showing this properly though. How do I get rid of the 5? Subtract 5 from both sides of my equal sign. If it helps you to make a upside down T, do it. So 5 minus 5, this becomes 0. I'm bringing down my x over 4, which really means x divided by 4. I'm bringing down my equal sign. 6 minus 5 is 1. How do I get rid of the 4 now? I got to multiply both sides of my equal sign by 4. So this cancels out to make 1. 1x is the same as x. 1 times 4 is 4. Okay, so that's your only difference today. I'm going to go through the rest of this page in the back, and then you're going to have the 13 and 14 to work on. So I need to make this 0. I want to get rid of the constant. Remember that that's called the constant. To get rid of it, I need the same amount of positives as negatives. We call that the additive inverse. 2 minus 2 is 0. That's why we added 2. So I have x over 4 equals 0. Well, this is much like number 2 and much like number 1 because anything times 0 is equal to 0. So this x divided by 4 is a lot like 1/4 x. Remember, whatever is in the bottom of my fraction is what I'm dividing by. Just something to keep in mind. All right, so if I subtract 2 from both sides to get rid of the constant, this says 0. I bring down my a divided by 3 equals -2. How do I get rid of the 3 below the fraction? I multiply it by 3. This becomes 1. A is equal to negative what? 6. Bravo. All right, same thing here. We need the same number of negatives as we have positive to get rid of this constant. 2 minus 2 is 0. That goes away. Remember, you always want to think through that to be sure you took the correct step here, okay? Bring down your x over 3. 2. I'm multiplying both sides by 3, so x equals 6. So similar to number 4, but a little bit different. We got to be careful of our integer rules and our signs. Oh, I hate these ones. I don't like it when we have it equal to 0. It doesn't help us at all. X over 3 equals 0. So what does x have to equal? 0. You can prove that if you will. So 1x equals 0. We had a lot of those, so that's kind of ridiculous. All right, a few more to practice together. how, now, if you're going really fast, remember, and you're like, oh, I'm just gonna subtract whatever numbers by itself, don't do this, right? 1 plus b over 4 equals 0. Okay, so did I get b any closer to being by itself? Not really, right? We didn't. We would have to keep on going. So that's why it's important to know, look at what's connected, what's on the side of your variable. So I'm going to subtract 5 from both sides. So I have b over 4 is equal to -1. Careful with your b. I notice mine is looking kind of like a 6. And then I'm multiplying both sides by 4 to get rid of it. b equals -4. Okay, how are we feeling? Okay, very similar to yesterday, except our second step today is multiplying instead of dividing. So how do I get rid of this constant? What's the opposite of -1? +1. Bringing down my x over 3. What's 1 plus 1? 2. What do I do to get rid of the 3? We're multiplying, and I show that, of course, by putting parentheses, multiplying both sides of my equal sign by 3. So 1x or x is equal to 6. What do I do here for number 9? How do I get rid of 4? What's the opposite of 4? -4, good. -4 minus 4. All in the same. 4 minus 4 is 0. It's always important to check that you've done it properly. Bring down your v divided by 2. Bring down your equal sign. -1 minus 4. -5. Hopefully those skills are still sharp from the beginning of the year review. What am I going to multiply both sides of my equal sign by? 2. Remember, if you accidentally multiplied it by -5, you would see that it's not getting rid of the 2. 2 divided by 2 is 1, which is what we want, right? Because we want 1v. -5 times 2, -10. How do we get rid of this -2? Add 2 to both sides. Remember to try and stay as neat as possible so you can look down these columns here and bring everything down that you can. -2 plus 2, that goes off to the bye-bye because it's 0. Bring down your equal sign. 0 plus 2 is 2. Remember, I'm going down each column. And how do I get rid of my 5? Multiplying both sides by 5. Because remember, this is really 5 over 1. 5n divided by 5. 1. That's really what I'm doing every time. So n is equal to, what's 2 times 5? Yeah. Questions, concerns, anything we're like, wait, what? Hopefully this is so similar to yesterday that we're just making one quick switch. This is algebra. All right, so that's page 12. You are to do 13 and 14 as your practice. There's 16 problems there and you have lots of time. So you may even have time to keep working it out if you need to. Remember, your first step, number 1, is to add or subtract. Remember, that gets rid of the constant. By constant. In your step 2, usually we would say multiply or divide, but we know in all of these, we're going to do what? Multiply. This says by coefficient. The number tied to the variable is our coefficient. By coefficients. Okay? So give those a go. The first one is a lot like those 0 ones. Hopefully you don't have too many of those. That's the only one I see on the first page. That's gonna be 0. There's one on the last page too. All right, feeling comfortable? All right, I'll be wandering around. Give these a go. Keep working on it.